Looking for a new pair of cowboy boots? Check out Tecovas. Tecovas is a Western wear company, and they're opening a store at the King of Prussia Mall this month. Tecovas boots are handmade and known for being stylish and comfortable. Some of these cowboy boots remind me of what my grandpa Willie would wear when he rode his horse and taught inner city kids all about cowboy life. The Tecovas grand opening party will be Friday, June 28th through Sunday the 30th. Grab a drink and get fitted by a pro. Find out more and see what catches your eye at tecovas.com. That's TECOVAS.com. See y'all there. Today on CityCast Philly, when you get a chance, look up at the signs in your neighborhood and pay close attention to the languages they're written in. I'm speaking with a social linguistics PhD candidate who has looked at over 3,000 signs here in the city and observed how language changes in 3 Philly neighborhoods. It's Monday, June 24th. I'm Trinae Nuri, and here's what Philly's talking about. Daniel Guarin, PhD candidate and graduate teaching assistant at Temple University. Welcome to CityCast Philly.
Hi, thank you so much for the invitation. It's very nice to be here, sharing space with you guys.
Daniel, you grew up in Colombia and you grew up as a native Spanish speaker, right?
That's correct. I grew up in the coffee region in Colombia, in a tiny city called Armenia.
So you came to Philly in 2019. So I'm curious, why were you so interested in studying the languages in Philly?
Well, I've been curious and interested in languages since I was a kid. And if you think of this, language is everywhere. We are surrounded by language, even if we don't pay attention to it. But if the question is why I got interested in the languages of Philadelphia, it was mostly because back in 2020, I was doing some research with the Colombian diaspora, trying to study if I could see any pattern of linguistic shift or like linguistic accommodation within these communities. So in doing some ethnographic research, I went to the Golden Block, which is known as the Latino neighborhood or El Barrio.
That's in the Fair Hill section of North Philly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's on 5th Street North and in between Lehigh Avenue. So I went there trying to find some like people that I could interview, like just to do some like basic ethnographic research. And it was fascinating and also very interesting that even though there was the Latino neighborhood, Spanish was not very visible. And then I went to Olney, which is upper North Philadelphia. And then I found this Colombian diaspora. And the Colombian diaspora was using more Spanish, but also like English was around. So for me, came up all these like different hypotheses of what's going on with the languages that were written in these different neighborhoods. Then when I first moved to Philly, I moved to South Philly near Oregon and 9th. And just seeing that there were like more languages available and how you always take my time to like look around, like see what's written on poles, what's written on these like announcement boards, and seeing all these different languages was a very interesting thing for me as a linguist to observe. So I decided to start like taking this seriously and start like collecting and coding this data of the signs that I was finding in these neighborhoods.
So fascinating. When I read this article in WHYY, and you were focused on the Golden Block in Olney and also the Italian market, why the Italian market?
Why the Italian market? I remember reading this paper by Professor Niet. He's a professor at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and he did a very interesting study on the Italian market. He was doing this research on how people go there expecting to have all this Italian cultural thing, but what they find is a very Mexican or like Central American cultural thing. So it's like this transformation, or as Professor Niet says, the semiotic transformation of the neighborhood. So based on that paper, I started going there to see like from a more linguistic point of view, what he was doing there. And then I just saw that it's not only the Mexican culture, is from a linguistic point of view, is a multilingualism going there. It's happening that different communities and different languages are, let's say, taking over the place. Like the place is not only like a single Italian cultural place, it's actually this beautiful, diverse in terms of cultural and linguistic diversity. That's basically the Italian market, and that's why I consider that as a different or a new area to conduct research in.
Daniel, I want to break down your study. And you just mentioned that it's in 3 different neighborhoods. So, what is your overall hypothesis, even though each of these neighborhoods is so different?
Yeah. Well, the hypothesis first, or what I really wanted to find, was if the main Hispanic neighborhood, as people will say, is the Golden Block, and Spanish is not really salient, is not really visible there, where's the Spanish really more alive? And what's the role of the Golden Block in Philadelphia? So that was my first research question, like what's the role of the Golden Block? But in terms of linguistics or linguistic landscape studies, I wanted to find out where in the city is Spanish really happening in terms of visibility. So those were my 2 things, like what's the role of the Golden Block and where is the Spanish really happening right now?
More on this language study after the break.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, CEO of CityCast, or, as I can say now, thanks to a few weeks with Babbel, hola, soy David Plotz, el jefe de CityCast. What if in 2024 you got a little bit better every day? When you're learning a new language with Babbel, that's exactly what you're doing. And if Babbel can help me start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, imagine what you could do in a full year. I got started with Babbel because I realized that my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker, and my son, who's in AP Spanish, were conspiring against me, or I thought they were conspiring against me in Spanish. I wanted to know what they were talking about. And now, thanks to literally just a few weeks of Babbel, I'm starting to be able to eavesdrop. It is rare that something so fun and simple, and Babbel is super fun and very simple, is also so useful. So here's a special limited time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Sign up to The Economist for in-depth curated expert analysis of world events and topics ranging from business and culture to science and technology. You'll get the weekly digital edition, online-only articles, curated newsletters on politics, the markets, science, culture and China, and full access to The Economist Podcast Plus. The Economist is independent journalism for independent thinking. Go to economist.com and get your first month free.
Okay, Daniel, you just explained why you were interested in studying Philly signs and your hypothesis. So tell me what you actually found, starting with the Golden Block.
So the Golden Block was something that I was kind of expecting. Based on my personal ethnographic observations, I got the sense that Spanish was not the most popular language. And that's what I found. Spanish is not the most popular language, even though it is the Hispanic neighborhood. What I was expecting to find was a good amount of bilingual signs, meaning signs that are written both in Spanish and English. And yeah, the number of bilingual signs in the Golden Block is very important, although the majority of these signs were written in English. So English is the most prevalent language. Also, bilingual signs are very important there. And then Spanish signs. I did this research and I was collecting data from 2021 to 2023. So it was a span of 3 years. And what I noticed is that there is no a clear pattern. Like science in Spanish decreased, while bilingual and monolingual science in English increased in the Golden Block within time. Meaning that as time goes by, they're like people are using more English to advertise their products, to communicate, or to address the community. Like if you want something to be read by someone in public spaces, let's say you post a sign in a pole or on a wall, most people are using English now or bilingual signs. They know like there are like people who speak Spanish or they need that people to get that information, but most of the information is in English.
Shifting into the Alani section, what did you learn in this neighborhood?
The Colombian diaspora has a very powerful area, and the symbolic value of this linguistic landscape is very visible there. Only is very interesting because it's a mixture of cultures, and just by walking around the neighborhood, you can find like a big Jamaican diaspora, so you can get all this nice Jamaican food. And then you can get all these very nice Colombian pastries. You have different Colombian establishments. But then if you keep walking, you will find different Korean stores and Korean, like the big Korean community. So it's this big, nice mixture of English Korean, English Spanish, and then Jamaican English. Colombian diaspora, according to some research, was the second biggest Latino population in Philadelphia in the 90s. And you can really see how big the community was because you have at least 3 blocks full of Colombian restaurants and bakeries and convenience stores. But again, Spanish is not the most predominant language. It is English. But the interesting thing is that English is mixed with Spanish, but also Korean. So it's a different way to like appreciate languages in public spaces.
I also want to highlight that when you look at a sign in a neighborhood and you are taking photos of these signs, it's not just written language. So there's also symbols and other messages on signs, right?
So that's more, that'll be a more like semiotic analysis. But yeah, something that it was very interesting back to this Colombian diaspora is the use of colors to show this cultural identity or just to resemble where we are coming from. So in the paper that I published, there are a collection of photos in which most of the establishments that you see in Olney had the Colombian flag, which is yellow, red, and yellow, blue, and red, and most of the signs were written under these 3 colors. So yeah, colors is very important. Also in South Philly, you see a lot of green, which resembles the Mexican flag. So yeah, colors is also very important because it gives us this symbolic idea of we come from Colombia or we offer Mexican products, or it's more like this, the connotation, the symbolic value of my store. This is what it doesn't tell you what it offers. It's just give you a certain like sense of who owns this place and what kind of place this is.
So speaking of South Philly, your final stop, you spent some time in the Italian market, and you say you noticed something you didn't really see in the other neighborhoods, and that was more multilingual signs.
Correct. Yeah. Back to the Golden Block and Olney, signs were either English Spanish, English Korean. South Philly was beautiful in the sense that it was not only English Spanish, it was English, Spanish, Vietnamese, English, Vietnamese, Khmer, English, Vietnamese, Spanish, Arabic, Russian. All those languages coexisting in one single sign. And besides this multilingualism or these different languages in the same sign, within time I noticed a pattern in which English signs were decreasing within time. So 2021, when I started my research and I collected the first data and I coded the first data, I noticed that English signs were very high in number, but within time, 2022 and 2023, that number of English signs were decreasing while Spanish were increasing, and new multilingual signs showed up. One of the anecdotes of the Italian market in South Philadelphia and was a live poultry store. So in 2021, 2022, as I was doing research there and taking pictures and collecting data, I noticed the same sign, and the sign was basically English and Mandarin Chinese, because I checked the pictures recently, so I know for a fact, English and Chinese. So you have a bilingual sign. Interesting, of course, beautiful, but nothing special. 2023 comes, and this live poultry store has a new sign, big sign, beautiful sign, but now they have their offers or their products in at least 5 different languages. So I guess for me, that's a way to see that within time, owners or people who are behind these signs are being more conscious of who live in this place, who live in this area, who we need to address, who needs to get the information of what we are offering. It might not sound like a big thing, but if you really take your time to analyze what's going on there in terms of diversity or cultural diversity, it's just a beautiful thing. Like all these languages together in one single sign. What is the meaning of that, right? Like who are living in South Philly? Who are sharing this space, right? Like the beauty of language is that language is who we are. My language is my identity, right? So just by having those languages sharing the single space is a way of respecting people's identity, is respecting people's values, is respecting people's culture. Like cultures and languages go together, and they're a very important part of their identity. So as a linguist and as someone who is bilingual and as someone who's just passionate about cultures and the world and languages, this is so meaningful.
Daniel, when you were talking about just how there's so many different languages in this South Philly neighborhood, it made me think about the time back in 2006 when we saw a sign from Gino Steaks, which is a popular tourist spot to grab a cheesesteak, and a sign that said, "This is America." And it says, "When ordering, speak English." So I'm curious, when you think about your study and the people you talked to and the businesses you saw, what's your sense of like overall Philly neighborhoods?
Yeah, well, language, not only beautiful, not only important for who we are, but also very powerful, and I love this anecdote of the cheesesteak place because it's a way, it's like the irony of life, like, oh, we don't want Spanish here, so English only. Now, what's this? Like 15 years later, you not only have Spanish, you also have Arabic and Khmer and Vietnamese. So the irony of life, I love that. There's a book called Language as Symbolic Power by Professor Kramsch, in which she explains how language is a tool for resistance. And even though these immigrant communities or these different linguistic diverse communities might not have the power itself to act, just by using their language in the public space, we can come up like stronger as a community. Like language is something that has a symbolic power and is a power that we can use to resist together. And I guess the story of the cheesesteak place is a great example of how these communities within time resisted that and went over it. And now Spanish is, as is shown in my study, is slowly but steady increasing in South Philadelphia. But not only Spanish, also multilingual signs.
And I just want to add that the sign is not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Since you've done this study, how has your perception of Philly changed?
This is something I was like telling a friend not long ago because we went out for a walk in South Philly. And we just saw this group of, I believe they were Vietnamese. The Vietnamese women were like dancing on a parking lot, something that I remember seeing when I was in Vietnam. When I saw this, and now being able to see the same thing in Philadelphia, being able to admire these cultures, to hear these languages, to see these languages in one city is fascinating. So people from Philadelphia must feel very happy and proud to be able to experience this. We have the possibility, just come down to South Philly, walk around, do not wear headphones, just have your ears and your eyes and your mind open to diversity and just appreciate the world. So that's something that people should feel proud of.
I was going to ask you, my last question was, would you consider yourself now a Philadelphian?
That's a lovely question. So, yeah, no, I feel like I've been living here for 6 years. I have fallen in love in Philly and with Philly. So, yeah, I love Philly, and I don't think if I can be considered a Philadelphian, but I just like to take care of the city. I like to advocate for the city. I don't really know what makes you a Philadelphian, but I love and I root for the city and for its people. And now that I can see and appreciate and admire this diversity, yeah, let's go Philly.
Well, you're a Philadelphian in my book. That was Daniel Guarin, PhD candidate and graduate teaching assistant at Temple University. Daniel, thank you so much for breaking down this study and for joining me on CityCast Philly.
Thank you for the invitation.
You can read more of Daniel's study by checking out the link in our show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoyed this episode about studying the signs in some Philly neighborhoods, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.